Hey guys, welcome back to Heart of the Hero. I'm Dan. I'm here with Greg. We're going to be talking about a lot of fun things today. What do you think we're going to get into tonight, Greg?
Not what we think, it's what we are getting into. We're getting into the cost of indecision, how to be more assertive. And if you're one of those people, who shows up at the party, is real quiet, doesn't talk to people, who doesn't say the things on their mind, right? This is for you. Because what we're going to be talking about today is really how to make yourself understand how to make choices, how to make them better, how to get what you want more often. Really comes down to your ability to make the decisions that you want when you want, right? There's sometimes this fear, and we'll get into it a little bit more. But if you understand this situation where, like, you might want to do a thing, right? You might want to say a thing, but there's this hesitance, right? There's this indecision, and you're like, well, maybe I shouldn't. And those people, those CEO types who are just like, get it done, bulldoze, run people over. Now, maybe you don't want to go all the way in that direction. I get it, but like, there's a medium there, right? It's a sweet spot where you can actually make decisions consistently. You can get what you want consistently, and you feel better. So we're gonna talk about today.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I can think of plenty of areas where I've, kind of wish I had more decisive, actions and thought processes. I spent probably a lot of my time early 20s just kind of floating by, not really making a decision about anything. I think I've talked about it once before with you, where it's just like, there's a long time where I was just okay with having absolutely no idea what my future was going to look like. I remember those times. I remember when that was like the okay, and that was the norm. And there, and a lot of it was seen as really not a big deal. I was very apathetic about my future. I was very, whatever. And I think, now, we're at kind of this place where that's not, it's not the case anymore. It's obvious we kind of move forward. We're grinding, we're making moves, we're starting businesses, these type of things that are great for us, but I think a lot of it came back like down to the ability, the actually decision to do it. It really kind of came all down to, we just needed to start, we just needed to go. I remember when we first started, we weren't even really where we were at now at all. As far as like businesses, I don't even want to talk about what my first business idea was, but it was, but it's like, it's funny because, we did a lot to get here, if you're like us, you've really done a lot to get here where you're at now. And so but if you remember back, it kind of was it was really the only thing that was stopping you was a decision. It was the ability to make that choice. And luckily for you guys, you've clearly seen the need for that, but we want to kind of point out where also that's going to kind of come up still for you. This isn't over for you. The cost of indecision is still a real thing that you need to be aware of while you're on your grind, while you're, going at your future and trying to achieve success. Indecision is something that you still need to kind of like have some eyes on in the future, have some foresight and some situations where that might be affected.
Well, I've been holding this kind of like a corked bottle for about 30 seconds here. I don't think it's a natural state. I don't think it's a natural state to be indecisive. I mean, that might be kind of a grandiose thing to say, but like, if you think about it,
who are you?
Grandiose. If you think about it though, like if you really go back, right, in your own history and your memory and your experiences, like when you're real little, like when you're, a toddler, like you're, waddling around, you got your Pampers on, slapping out your booty, right? Like you're your kid. Everything that you want, you go for it. Like if you want to go stick your finger in the lighter or the outlet, you're gonna go for it, right? If you want to go eat, you go for it. If you want to cry, you go for it. Like you don't.
Not if you have good parents.
Yeah, but there's still going to be good parents who are telling you like, hey man, like that apple on the table, please don't try and grab that. You can't stand that high yet, but you still went for it, right? Like so I don't think that there's this, it's like there's a disconnect, right? Maybe it's like in between, when you're middle school or teenager or whatever, where we like learn why we should be decisive. Like people will tell you, hey, you know, the thing that you're doing is wrong, or the decision that you made is not going to work, or, you know, you may even have situations where like the things that you do don't pan out, right? Maybe you got burned a couple of times and you're like, okay, well, maybe I should be a little more cautious. Maybe I should step back a little bit. It's like this learned response that really keeps you from doing and getting what you want, because you have, it's like a pattern you pick up, right? And so maybe we could illuminate what that looks like for people, because if you're watching this, you do struggle with indecision, right? Maybe you've been assertive in the past, right? Maybe you're moving towards that, and it's a part of the success journey that you really got to get a handle on. Because if you can't make the decisions that you want, right? If you can't do the things that you need to get done, you're not really going to be able to make a whole lot of progress. So maybe we could kind of illuminate some of the tinkering problem areas that they're going to run into just with this as an issue.
Well, I mean, you know, it kind of just depends on what you're getting into, you know. I mean, what's your field of study? You know, it's all going to be. I wear this hat ironically, if anybody's seen what it says.
It's savage though.
You know, it just depends on where you're at. You know, it depends on what your line of work is, because each person is going to have a different relative experience, you know, a different issue, a different problem, an issue making a certain type of decision, where some decisions are easy for people to make, you know, and others aren't. You know, emotional decisions that have to do with, you know, how you feel might be really easy for somebody, but other people it's complicated. And, you know, or emotions are really, you know, easy for you, and, you know, hard, you know, logic doesn't really sit with you very well. But, you know, this is a skill that you need to practice and kind of accumulate, because what can happen is you can miss opportunities. You know, you can really miss opportunities. You know, I try not to focus on that once they're gone. So, you know, but I could pull up a few memories of times that I'm just like, man, if I was just more on the ball there, you know, if I was just paying attention to opportunities ahead of me and like making decisions and moving forward, I would have just ended up, you know, I remember, you know, a while back at a manufacturing job, you know, if I would have kept going in the direction that I was going, I would have been, you know, my boss's boss at this point. Like, it was, you know, because, you know, I had done the math. I talked to the people that were above me at the time and what they had planned for me. And it was because of my indecision, you know, it was because of my inability to make the call in that moment, and kind of feeling like hesitant because I wasn't really sure of myself, or I was kind of scared, or I was, you know, I mean, you know, this was a while back, but, you know, this was, it was something that kind of hit me later. It was just like, man, I could have had a pretty cool job by now, you know, and at the time I really didn't like my job. So it was like, that was like a kind of a frustrating thing. So it was like, oh, I could have had a cool job. And because I didn't, you know, didn't pay attention, didn't actually make the choice to commit and go all in on this. And I think that's kind of one of the things that you'll notice is again, depending on your line of work, you know, I could go into all the scenarios that I can think of that kind of best fit you, but you know the scenario I'm talking about. You know maybe the memory that you have of that time that you wish you could have, you know, done that thing that you know that would have gotten you that. I don't want to get general here because because you know what I'm talking about related to you. You know you see how this relates to you. You're smart. You get it. You know, you're with us. You're here. You're moving forward. You've already done this before, and that's kind of what you need to recognize is that, you know, you've already made this kind of life-altering decision. You know, you've kind of already, or at least you've kind of made a commitment of some sort to do something. You know, some goal, right? And you've already done this. You know, and so try to look back and see how your life would look now if you hadn't made that decision. You know, like. Like that can kind of give you a picture. That's how I try to live sometimes, is in the moment when I'm dealing with some things that I feel are more important to me. I try to think, I'm like, all right, 6 months from now, like a year from now, like what could happen if I did this? What could happen if I didn't do this? Like, and I try to actually think of the possibilities, which isn't a stretch for my brain because that's how it works. But you know, I try to think of the possibilities that could come if I make of the decisions that I'm making. And I think that's not something you want to stress yourself over, but like if you don't actually if you don't have the ability to make confident decisions, you know, in the moment, split on the fly decisions, like you're going to miss out on things. You're going to miss out on opportunities. You're going to miss out on experiences in life, even, just because your lack of decision. Like even I could go on, man. There's, relationships. There's, I remember there's women that I could have had a relationship with if I would have just acted, if I wouldn't have been a coward, or if I wouldn't have been in my feelings, or, if I would have been just more assertive and actually made the call and like asked her out, like, or, didn't get in my head and get all weird when she didn't respond, and stuck with it, and, stuck with my choice. Like, I could have had this relationship with this amazing person. It was like, it wasn't a big deal. I mean, life goes on, but it was just like these opportunities that I could have had. And I see after in hindsight, because hindsight's kind of a pain in the ass, where, I mean, it is sometimes. It's like, man, ignorance can be bliss. I don't encourage ignorance at all, but it's just like, it's bliss sometimes, because when you see things that you're like, oh man, why didn't I have this in my head then? And so anyway, it's a big opportunity waster.
No, it's an opportunity waster. It's a time killer. But I think it's even more than that. It's like a bore in your ear, because it's like
a bore.
A bore, like you ever seen those digger things, just like in your ear.
Pretty intense, man.
It's bad. It's bad because it's like you have there's a fear there, and that's what causes it, right? And like if you're not in a place where you can be consistently assertive, like and I'm not saying you're never assertive, because you are, right? You're on the success path, you're on your journey, you're doing your thing, you go to work, whatever. But like sometimes you don't make the decision that's right in front of you. Like it's right in front of you, right? And you're like, no, and then you don't, right? And so those are the moments where those are opportunities that create more opportunities, right? Everything that you do opens up new pathways, right? Let's say that you go take a job in a new city, right? Well, maybe you meet some new people. Well, maybe those people give you another job down the line, or maybe you meet a girl through those people, or maybe just that one decision, right? You step back, you don't do that thing, right? You stay exactly where you're at, right? And a lot of times that the decision to not move, right, to not act, to not be decisive and really put yourself out there and be assertive on that decision and say, I'm standing with this and I'm doing this, it comes from a place of like, you're afraid. Like you're thinking, well, if I just stay with this, if I just do this, right, and I just hold on to this decision, and I don't go any farther, I don't take the risk, I don't put myself out there, I don't, go spend the money, I don't go start the business, I don't move to the new city, whatever it is, right? Like I don't talk to the girl, the guy, like you don't do that thing. You feel like, right? You feel like, and I'm not saying this is what it is, but you feel like you can't be hurt, right? You feel like you can't lose. You feel like there's no risk because you're not having to do it, right? But the problem is ultimately the way that you're thinking about it is from a position of not wanting to risk what you have, right? You're thinking from a position of loss. Like, okay, if I got $100, right? I don't want to go spend 50 of it to try and, play the slot machine, or to try and, go start a business, or to try and talk to this, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is, $50. Well, you're thinking, I'll lose $50. I'll lose this opportunity. You got to squeeze it, right? Well, the problem with that is you're not looking forward at the opportunities that doing that thing will create, right? Being assertive. What would that gain for you? Like, what would that get for you? How would you feel afterwards? So I think the problem a lot of times that needs to be addressed out from the outset, right? Because the biggest obstacle is you're afraid to be assertive.
Well, and it's almost as if you hold on to it, like you were saying. You hold on to that decision that you were going to make, and you feel like you can't be hurt. But it's also that it's almost like that decision was going to stay there. That it's like, okay, I have this. Like you have something cooking. You've got this opportunity, and that fear it puts you into kind of a comfortable state of like, oh, I have this. Well, I'm going to do this. It kind of gives you evidence for your brain to come up with excuses why you're not doing things. Because like when somebody asks you, because man, we all like to talk. Like we all like to talk about the cool things that we're going to do and that we want to do. And, like I got so tired of just talking about it. I remember that I used to just get sick of myself, like sick of hearing myself talk, like that I would intentionally be quiet at work and just not to talk to anybody unless I was spoken to, because I was just running my mouth. And I knew that I wasn't getting what I needed to get done, and I knew, we used to talk about this all the time. You used to hear me say this to you all the time, when we were first starting out, like, I can do more, man. I just feel like I'm not doing enough, like I just like, yeah, this is cool, I'm working, but like, I could be doing more. Like, why can't I be doing this? And why can't you be doing this? Yeah. And where that kind of drove me to make decisions that I needed to make, and in that, it kind of creates opportunity. I talked about the opportunity that's limited to you. Let's talk about the opportunity on the flip side. Let's inverse that a little bit and talk about the opportunity that it gets created for you. Like if you're actually able to make decisions, because we'll get into some kind of practical applications that you can use in your daily life to enhance your decision-making skills a little bit later. But like, I want to talk about for a second, the opportunity that can be created by making decision, because there was a time in my life where, opportunity wasn't, I didn't have a lot of opportunities. I could move up in my company, but that was really all was available to me at the time based on my education level. And so I was kind of, in this depressed state of just like, really not really depressed, but just depressed about my future. It was just like, knew that this wasn't leading anywhere, or at least anywhere I wanted. And so I decided just to start learning. I just started to just dig into books. I knew some of the areas like psychology and self-development that I wanted to get into. And so, I kind of dove in. I got some books from you, got some ideas from you and areas to look into. And, I dug in and I started reading, and then I had an idea about what I wanted to do. And, we talked about it, and that was a rough idea, and it wasn't really what I wanted to do. We moved on, and I moved on, and I kept moving, and as I read more and I learned more about entrepreneurship and passive income and all the, information products and self-development, psychology and sociology, as I learned about these things, all of a sudden I started noticing different like career options that I didn't even know were available, or types of businesses that I could start that I didn't even realize was something that was available to me, because I didn't know before. I didn't have the information, I didn't have that information readily available to me to like make the decision. And that's why I harp sometimes about like really researching and actually like in becoming informed and reading and being knowledgeable about things, and especially the areas that you want, because that's how you make confident decisions, or at least that's what helps make confident decisions. And when you make decisions, it creates opportunities, because it creates avenues. Like there was my like my brother, as a businessman, and there was conversations that we couldn't have when I was younger, when I was inexperienced and I didn't know a damn thing. Like and he knew I had potential, he knew I had intelligence, but he had guided me as best as he could. He's a little older than I, but I hadn't really ever took. And so once I had actually dug in and started moving, I had just, all of a sudden there was these job opportunities that were opening up for me in the businesses that he was starting, because it was something I was actually able to do. And it was, and he was confident with my dedication to success based on the decisions that I had been making, and so it's really exciting too. Like it gets you excited if you're looking for excitement in your life and looking for a change and something nice, and just that's going to change the pace up a little bit and change the scenery. Start making some decisions on some things and just see what's available, because that's what starts, that's the core of this. That's the core of the feeling better. That's the core of getting your life together, is actually being able to make decisions. And some decisions are a lot easier to make. Let's be real. We're talking about the biggies here. We're talking about like, the direction of the business that you're starting. We're talking about, where you want to live and where you want to base your business out of. We're talking about like what major you want to, double in, like what you want to go get your master's or go to get your, doctorate, like whatever you want to do, whatever, high goal that you set for yourself, it all comes down to the ability to make that decision. And if you don't have, what are some of the things that you think that a person would need to be able to make a confident decision, a decisive,
a target?
Yeah,
hands down. You need a target, and I got a story you made me think of. I remember when I was even before I was getting started, I wasn't anything. I was basically psychologically not a person. Like I didn't know anything about the world, didn't know anything about stuff or people or businesses or money or whatever, right? Politics. And I remember I always did this thing as this thing. And a lot of people who tend to be indecisive do this thing where, and you may not tell anybody, right? You may not tell anybody, but you have these thoughts. It's like, I'm so much better than this. I'm so much better than these things. So much so that I don't need to make this decision. Because at some point in the future, some other person or me, or I'll figure out how it works and I can make this decision, right? I remember way back, right? When I was really first getting into anything, I was aware. I knew that I didn't know what I wanted to do. And maybe you identify with that. I hope you identify with that, because if you don't know what you want to do, that means you're in a place where you can choose, right? It means you can actually pick, what do you want to do with your life, right? Well, the problem is if you stay in that space, right? You stay in that space where you're like, okay, I don't really know what I want to do, or I don't really know where I want to go, or I'm okay with what I have right now, and I don't really want to think of, right? You stay in that space. What happens is you get this growth on your mind, right? It's a parasite. It's like, it's a sickness. You're tired, right? You start to feel like that's where you should be. You feel like, well, I am this kind of person who doesn't make decisions that are assertive or active or, risky or might cause me pain. And you get this callus, right? It's like working with an axe for too long in a field, right? You can feel it in your head, in your mind, in your heart, whatever. And you start doing this thing consistently where you'll see decisions, they appear. Right? Maybe someone says, hey, you want to go do this? Or, hey, you want to, try this thing out? Or, hey, maybe I got a new job offer for you. Or do you like your job now? You want to go somewhere else? Or you want to go to school? All these options, right? All these things, but they're big decisions, right? They're big decisions. They're the kind of decisions that will take you from that place of safety to somewhere you don't know, to some unknown land where dinosaurs could eat you, or whatever the case may be, right? It's stuff you don't know. It's the danger zone. It's outside of your comfort zone, right?
Danger zone. Sorry.
It's like you get stuck in that though. And if you don't, right? If you like move outside of that slowly, and it's not something that you can just like immediately start doing, right? You can't just like, I don't want to say that you're immediately going to be this super hyper aggressive, assertive, always yes person, right? But you need to at least be open to moving outside of what you think you should do right now.
Well, and I think being open is a big part of it, because if you're not open to the idea of change, you're not open to the idea of, actually moving in any direction that you want. If you're not in a position where you're not in control of your life, why? Why aren't you in control of your life? I mean, you want to be, right? I mean, you are at some level because you're here, and you are at some level because you're doing what you're doing. But basically what I hear when I hear somebody tell me that they can't make a decision is, I don't want it bad enough. I'm too scared to succeed. I'm going to let my emotions control my decisions. And those are all really hard. Might have lost a viewer or two during this video because of that. And I'm okay with it, because I want to talk to the people that are in control of their life. And you can be in control of your life if you learn how to make good decisions. So one of the things that I was talked about already was information. Okay, like you actually need to be informed on what you're talking about. You can't just make decisions blindly. Okay, if you're on a boat in the middle of the ocean, you don't have a compass, you don't know what direction is what, you don't know where to go, and you could end up anywhere. So you have to have information. You have to have this information to actually make a calculated decision. As far as like confident decision making or decisive, that comes from a place of practice. Okay, like you haven't been making a lot of great decisions in the past, right? In the past, you were making decisions that maybe didn't always align with what you wanted. Maybe some were in there, and that got you at least out, so you could be where you are now, and that's great. But you being good at making decisions comes with practicing making decisions and practicing trusting your gut, being informed enough to where you can be confident to make decisions, seeing the evidence of the decisions that you're making actually give you the results that you want consistently. Now, the only way that happens is if you make decisions. Are you in control of your life or not? Are emotions controlling your life? Are things like fear controlling you? I understand fear more than a lot. And it's a very powerful emotion. And it's a very clever one too. It doesn't, it hides in your thoughts, you know, it kind of hides in the explanations you give yourself for not doing things, you know, it comes up with like, you know, evidence and reasoning, it's rationale, it's logic. You know, you can convince yourself mentally. You can convince yourself mentally to prevent yourself from feeling it emotionally. And guess what? That's fear. You know, and are you in control of your life or not? Like, because it takes you being in control. It takes you not succumbing to fear and practicing making decisions so that you can see the results that you're getting from the decisions you make and decide whether the types of decision you're making are now good. Are they? Have I been doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Have I been making better decisions? Yeah, okay, I've been doing this. I've been doing this. Yeah, and I did this. And yeah, I did this. And yeah, everything's going great. So, wow, I could be confident in my decision making next time. Oh, hey, I have to make this decision. Well, okay, decisive decision. Like I've been doing good. Like I got a good mindset on, you know, like, but you haven't, or maybe you just have started taking on this mindset, or you've kind of like, you know, a year into it, 6 months into it, and you're still kind of like, you know, slacking. Because I'm telling you what, like, I remember a year after I started and I was still slacking, you know, and honestly, you should always tell yourself you're slacking. What do you think, Greg?
I'm still chewing on to tell yourself you're slacking, Mr. I'm the successful. This guy, that's not shit he says. That's not shit he says. You shouldn't tell yourself. I mean, you can tell yourself you're slacking, but don't beat yourself up. Don't get in that spiral of like, I'm such a slacker. I'm not good at doing this. I can't do this. Like, you're better than that. And I am the kind of person, right? The hypercritical, you know, like you might be on the path to success, but I want to tweak that just a little bit, right? You can tell yourself that if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, right? If you're actually on the path, if you're actually moving in the direction of your successful goals, whatever it is to you, right? It could be anything. When I think of an assertive person, right, who makes the decisions that come to them, there's this thing that I don't think most people take into account. Honestly, I don't know that we can take it into account because we don't think about it a lot. But you got to recognize you're always making decisions that you can't verify are true. Always. Any decision that you're making ever is a decision based from now into the future, right? So if someone offers you a job and your rationale, your logical reasoning is, well, I don't want to take that job because I want a job that pays me X amount of money and they don't pay me enough money. Okay, that makes sense. That makes logical sense. That's a great reason. That's a fantastic but how do you know? How do you actually know that taking that job, right? Taking that job might solve a problem for the company, right? You might be so good at that job, or you might be just the person they needed at the right time. And your boss tells you, man, I really appreciate the work that you do. I really appreciate how hard you work and how dedicated you are. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to bump you. I've never done this before, but I'm going to bump up your salary. First month, you have no way to verify. You have no way to know if that's true or not, right? So when you make decisions, you can think you know what the answer will be, right? You can think you have the solution, the answer, the way forward, right? But ultimately, you've got to understand every decision that you make is from a position of you don't actually know. You can be confident in your information. You can be confident in what you know. You can be confident without information, right? You could just believe that that's going to happen if you want. But the thing to understand is that there's really no way to verify it because it hasn't happened yet, right? Tomorrow, you could get hit by a tornado. You could lose your arms. You could be brain dead. All these things could happen. I mean, they're not likely for sure, but it's like you don't actually know, right? So if you loosen up that tendency, right? There's a tendency with a lot of people especially in personal development circles and people trying to be successful, that they think that they know, right? You think that you know the answers. You think that you know the way forward. You think that your way is correct and the other people's way is wrong. But the problem with that is your way is no more correct than anyone else. It just might fit what you're doing at that moment. Because think about it. Just imagine, right? Really picture this. How many people live on this planet? Is it 8 billion now? Is it 8 billion? Is it 7.5 billion? Right? Well, each one of those people have a certain amount of perspectives. They have a certain amount of beliefs. They have a certain amount of information they've acquired based on the life that they have lived. And you believe that your perspectives, your information is better than the majority of most of those people because you have only used your own information. How else would you live? How else would you survive? You can't use someone else's brain, right? So these are totally out there concepts, I understand, but listen, it's important because if you don't learn to let go of your own thoughts about things, right? That blocker, that thing that keeps you from being assertive and confident in the decisions you've made because you decided them, right? You said, I want to do this. This makes sense to me. I can pull this off. And anything that comes up, right? Anything that shows up, I will work it out. I will fix it. I will deal with it. I'm not going to quit, right? Drop that fear that keeps you from actually thinking that's a possibility for you because it is.
Yeah. And I think that stems back to the, opening yourself up to the opportunities, because that's like, the you not knowing what could happen, and not being open to that kind of prevents it from happening. You're kind of rejecting potential possibilities in your life based on assumptions, or based on other people's information or lack of information if you're in that position. And so, I mean, I think it's definitely important to, so I think one way I think I kind of started practicing making decisions was is I started like not overthinking the little ones. Like I wouldn't spend any time. I really wouldn't spend any time on making decisions. I really hated long discussions about things that I thought were trivial. It was like, no, I'm just done. Like I'm like, whatever, sure, yes, okay. Like, yeah, okay, let's do that. That sounds good. Like I was really simple stuff, times I'm picking up my kids, times, weekends, switches, whatever whatever my scheduling was with my parents and the holidays or whatever, the trivial things that go on in your life, what time you're hanging out with your friends. It didn't matter to me. I was just like, I used to like kind of like sit there like, I don't know, what do you want to do? I don't know, what do you? Well, it doesn't really matter to me. This would work for me. And we'd have this long discussion, and I was all this just back and forth texting for stuff that I realized can be solved in like 2 minutes, one text, two texts, because you just like, okay, yeah, let's do that. Because you have all these reasons. You're like, well, but what if this, and well, but what if this, and well, but what if this, and sure, some of those could happen, but most times they don't. And everything's fine. And so like, I was just like, I'm done. And so that was kind of a practice that I developed, and it was great too, because people responded poorly at first, but eventually like understood that I was just trying to be decisive and not really like lengthen things that didn't need to be lengthened. I didn't want to be bothered with trivial things and the details that didn't matter. Let's just make a decision on this and move forward, because it really doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference. And sometimes, I maybe wish like, yeah, maybe I wish I would have done that differently. But again, it didn't really matter. Everything was fine. Life moved on. I moved on. There wasn't a big deal, and especially that's a way you can kind of learn to recognize certain decisions that you're good at and certain ones that you're not, and so that's kind of another practice that you can start trying to implement. Don't worry about trivial things like bills, when to pay things, what time to meet up, what time we're doing this, what days are we going to do this, how am I going to pay? Just don't worry about those things. Just make the decision and move on.
Do you think there's a different level of decisions? You said don't the big ones, and that's why I assume there's small ones. And do you think that there's a different level of decisiveness for different levels of decisions? Maybe.
I mean,
like
I think
some
maybe
people might be less or more.
Well, I mean, it probably depends on the level. I mean, it probably just depends on this decision, the impact of the decision, the gravity of the thing that you're deciding over. If it really doesn't matter either way to you, then don't spend time talking about it. Like it doesn't matter. Like it's a cliche phrase, pick your battles. Like if it doesn't, if there's options given to you that either one would be fine with you, why are you even thinking about it? Just doesn't matter. Just pick one and go. It doesn't matter, like, right? If it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. Now, what you'll notice when you start to have to make bigger decisions is that you'll start to notice the things that don't really matter about that. And you don't, the details that are kind of trivial, you can kind of see the main core of it, because all the rest is just kind of chatter in your head, chatter. What about this? What about this? Well, you know that none of that really matters. None of that really most of the time happens. So what are the actual things that I need to focus on? I think that's kind of what changes the decisiveness. Well, no, not decisiveness, because once you've made the choice, make the choice. If you're indecisive, and if you're making a decision and it's not completely, you haven't completely committed to the decision, then that's not making a decisive choice. Don't go into something like, well, I don't know, but I think I'll do this. No, just even tell yourself, like, no, I'm doing this. This is what we're gonna go ahead. We're done. Boom. No more thoughts about it. Move on.
So they might be catching your energy right now, and I'm even curious. What are, because it's easy to say that, like, it's easy to say that from the position of having done it, and I've been there and you've been there, right? Like with success and making decisions, but what are some practical ways that you could maybe start pushing yourself towards being able to do that thing you mentioned, where like you can make the decision and then stick by it and just let it go. Like this is done. I'm doing this, and then move forward. Like, what are some maybe concrete ways that a person could really actually go to that direction? Practical stuff.
I mean, it's I don't think it's something that there's a trick to. You have to just make decisions. There's no like, oh, here's this practice that'll lead you up to making this decision. I'm sorry, I have no sympathy. I'm sorry. I've seen no other way. I know no other way. In fact, I actually don't know, because the only way that I've seen myself get better at making decisions is by making decisions. The only way I've heard of people making better decisions is by making better decisions. Look, if you want to go online and type into your Google taskbar how to make better decisions, you'll find a ton of websites with a bunch of tips that you can try to apply to your life and implement into. But I'm telling you that all those are trying to get you to do is make the decision. You're going to feel fear. There's practical ways of dealing with fear. You have to be able to be aware of what it is you want. Be aware of the risk. Be aware of what the fear is. Okay, you can recognize it, but it doesn't have to control you. There can be a hesitance to make a decision, like we were talking about earlier, because you're feeling very comfortable. You're comfortable, and you can't get hurt this way. Well, that's fine, but you need to realize and be self-aware that about the things that you want. I think a big thing just comes with self-awareness, is knowing what you want. How bad do you want this? Because focus on that. Focus on the things that you want. Focus on what it'll take. Focus on the benefits of how it's going to look. Because what you have to realize too is that you're kind of committing to some work and some diligence and some discipline in the now for the benefits later, where most of our lives we spent kind of living for the instant gratification, feeling good now, now lifestyle, where when you, I believe, start to grow up, you realize that you have to start actually making decisions for the years to come, rather than the months and weeks in front of you. And so I think focusing on that is a good way to motivate you. It's about, I think it's about getting motivated to make decisions. So you have to find the things that motivate you, what makes you passionate. And that kind of, honestly, this is such a big topic that I think we might end up probably doing another video on this, because I could crack
Right.
open a couple of things that it goes so deep. It's not just fear. If you're going to crack it down and you want to go into self-awareness and what it is that you want, you have to figure that out, write that down, know yourself, actually look out and do more research with that information, knowing what you want. You have to direct and doing all of this. It's a combination of all these. It's the having a healthy dose of fear rather than irrational fear. And not letting it control your decisions, and thinking through reason based on the things that you actually want, and focusing on things that motivate you, focusing on things that actually point you at what you want. Keep your eye on the prize, because if you don't, and you're focusing on all the things that feel good over here and around here, you're not really you're not really paying attention to what it is that you want. You know, you're not, and that can make you lose sight and wander off the path that you need to be on. And so I think a big thing is kind of having a hunger, a mental control, self-control, building diligent habits, getting organized. These are all decisions. You don't even feel like they're decisions. You're like, I'm going to clean up today. That's a decision. You make decisions every day. We'll start recognizing the decisions that you're already making. See how many, you count how many decisions you make a day, as many as you can. You'd be just amazed at how many decisions you actually make, almost subconsciously too, throughout your day. Start doing that, because you'll see that you make some pretty just like really quick, easy decisions without even thinking. And it can show you that it's not some thing that needs to be intimidated. You've built it up in your mind to be this big thing, and it's not. It's actually the gateway to your success. It's the gateway to feeling good, but you're scared of it. Why? I mean, look, failure happens regardless if you go for your dreams or not. There's people that work at a job for 30 years and then get laid off in their back half of their life. I mean, what, they played it safe. You know, they stayed at a blue collar job and worked it for 20 years, and then the factory shut down. Well, I mean, you can fail either way. You could die right now. You could die on the way to work tomorrow. You could lose all your money tomorrow. I mean, anything could happen. So what? This is just a more specific fear that you're coming up with. Like, you assume that it's more likely, and that comes from. And so I think, you know, one way you need to kind of pay attention to what you're scared of too. You know, so if I were to, I mean, that was a lot I just kind of threw at you, but it's not really something that's any individual thing, is as much that it all kind of stems together, and it all comes from having practice making decisions. And if you want, start little, but you need to start getting good at making decisive decisions and trying to focus on only things that matter in that moment, rather than all the rationale and chatter that comes up in your mind in those moments. If you're a heady person.
You're saying this, and I got this kind of like, I mean, I got chills, but I also got this impression of like, you kind of have to walk down your own future. Like, you have to kind of walk yourself, and no one wants to do this. Like, nobody wants to be the person who does this for themselves. Like, to really scope out, like to look down the lane of your future, right? Just to see, okay, so, well, if I just do this, where am I going? Like, what am I going to do? Like, what's going to happen? Like, how will I feel? Like, you go down that line, right? You know, a couple years, like a couple weeks or 10 years, right? And I'm getting this impression, I'm getting this picture of like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Monsters, Inc., right? Great movie. It's funny. But in the movie, there's these conveyor belts, right? There are these moving hanger things with doors on them, right? And there's doors attached to them, and all these different kinds of doors. You know, red doors, blue doors. You know, very very ornate. You know, very very high class doors. All hundreds of them, thousands of them, right? And they're all going on these conveyor belts, all the different places. And what happens is, when you walk through the door, right, when they're monsters in the show, but, you know, it could be people, could be anybody. You walk through these doors in the movie, and what happens is it takes you to this new place. Like, you open up the door, right, and they lock it down in the little machine, right, and you twirl the handle and you open it up, and you're in some new building. You're like, you're in somebody's house. You're in a closet, right, and you come in. And you kind of explore, you kind of look around, you're like, oh, where am I? Like, what is this? Or, oh, it's a kid's room, or, oh, it's some, you know, some wherever it is. Well, I'm getting this picture because I'm thinking of all the people who aren't going to do this whole looking down their own future, right? Well, you got to recognize that if you choose not to be assertive, right? If you choose not to cultivate this ability and say, you know what, I'm going to make my decisions. I'm going to stick by them. I'm going to be confident in them. I'm going to actually make them work for me, for what I want, right? Well, what you're doing, this is essentially what you're doing to your future, you know, to yourself, to your kids, to your family, to your friends, to your pocketbook. You are opening a door. You're not even opening a door. It's the door you're in right now, right? It's the room you're in right now. It's the one of many, the one of billions, the one of trillions of opportunities and places you could be and things that you could do and doors you could open. You've instead chose to sit in the room that you're in your legs crossed, drinking your tea or whatever you're drinking, right? You're looking at all these doors and they're passing by, and there's people and you know what they're doing, and it happens, right? That happens. But you are too afraid. You are too unsure about what might happen, right? What if you can't get back to this place that you're at now? What if the room is different? What if it's bigger? What if there are more people? What if something's changed? What if I'm afraid, right? So you don't know what's exactly stopping you from opening the door, right? But I'll tell you what it is. It's just a fear of either missing out, losing what you have now, right? Or a fear that you can't handle what's in the future. That's all that it is, right? So this impression, right? This idea, it's really nothing more than a way to show you, a way to illuminate what will happen to you if you don't make this adjustment, right? Because I know that you want to do it. Like there might be some resistance, right? There might be some things that you're like, well, but you ultimately do want to make this change because everyone wants to be a little more assertive, right? Everyone wants to be a little bit more, be able to make those decisions and feel good about them, right? It's crisp. It's like a clean feeling because the decision you made is a sound one and you are confident in it, right? So the whole door metaphor, right, is what you're going to do if you choose not to do this. So I urge you to look forward, right, to look ahead, to look at the next decade and see what opportunities you could actually get, what you actually could gain by maybe making some more assertive, risky, or just more confident decisions in what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean that really I don't know if you have anything else on that, man, because I think that kind of covers it for me. I mean, really just really don't stop. Keep on the grind, keep doing what you're doing. If you have a feeling of like you're slacking, and it keeps coming back to you, there might be a reason. And you might not be making decisions that you need to be doing because you don't want to work harder and you want to, and you just don't want to make that decision because that would mean you have to do more or whatever it is. So maybe, other than that, we pretty much covered it. I feel like we've given you guys a pretty good idea of the importance behind why you need to have the ability to make, decisions in your life and not be afraid of them and overcome that fear and take time and practice actually building skill that is a skill that needs to be built if you're going to continue down the road of success.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There's a lot that we could add, right? There's a lot that we could, shove in
episode
here.
Two, man.
Right. And there might be episode 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, but it's like, just look into this, see if you can maybe make some changes today, right? Tonight, tomorrow, whatever, like whatever the day is for you. Just like find a thing that maybe you've been indecisive about. Like it could be something simple, right? Like maybe you need to go buy pencils or like whatever it is. Like maybe you just do it, right? And just see what happens. Like just see if maybe the sky doesn't fall, right? Maybe, the world doesn't end. Maybe it goes well. Maybe something happens that's interesting that like changes the way that you look at the fact that you're not making decisions, right? Because you can do it. I mean, we started and it was not an easy process at the first. And then we kind of got rolling and said, you know what? Oh, this is easy. Oh, this is easy. Oh, this is easy. Wow. Like this is a consistent thing. And it still is fairly simple, right? Because once you get to a point where you've made enough decisions from a place of confidence, right? From a place of surety, from a place of, and I don't mean misplacing it. I mean, you just know that, okay, whatever happens, I'm sticking by this decision because I feel like at the moment I made it, it was a good one. I'm going to hold out and I'm going to see what happens. When you do that consistently, you start to feel better about the things that you're doing, right? About the places that you're going, right? And you kind of lose that weird, fearful unsurety about where you might be going or what might happen, right? Because you're confident in yourself. It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. So take this home and get started. We'll see you soon.